Imagine this. You're walking down a quiet street called Serenity Way, thinking about a problem in your life. Suddenly, a musician on the street starts playing a song that sounds like it's about exactly what you're going through. Then, you think about an old friend, and just then they send you a message. Later, while looking through old stuff in your attic, you find a book. A line in the book really stands out to you and feels important. Even later, you hear someone else say that same line. Pretty strange, right? This might seem like just a coincidence, but it's actually something called synchronicity. These are special moments that feel like the universe is talking to you. Before we unravel this mystery, I want to remind you, if you enjoy exploring such fascinating topics, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Synchronicity is a term that was thought up by a smart psychologist named Carl Jung. He said that synchronicities are like life's little mysteries. They're those surprising moments that make you stop and think. It's as if the universe is solving a puzzle, and these moments are the pieces that fit just right. We're going to talk about what synchronicities are, why they happen, and what they could mean. Join us as we look into some really interesting ideas. Let's start by talking about what synchronicities are. Basically, they happen when things come together at the same time in a way that feels important, but you can't really explain why. It's like life is giving you a secret message through events that happen just at the right time. Carl Jung, who was very important in psychology in the 1920s, thought that these strange coincidences show us that everything in the world is connected. He called this the collective unconscious. It's like a big collection of human experiences that we all share. It has stories and symbols that show up in our lives. The word synchronicity combines Greek words that mean together and time, which is about things happening in our lives that seem important and connected. Synchronicities are about moments in our lives that seem important and connected. Psychologists think these might be ways our subconscious minds are speaking to us. It's like what Freud said about hidden thoughts and feelings popping up when we least expect them. Carl Jung, another psychologist, went further. He believed these shared experiences in our lives, these synchronicities, are like messages from the universe, showing us we're part of something bigger. Nowadays, experts have many ideas about synchronicities. Some think they're just our brains trying to find patterns in a confusing world. Others think they could be hints of a deeper reality where time and space are different from what we think. It's like looking at a shiny diamond from different sides, with each view showing something new. Synchronicities make us curious and wonder about the mysteries of our minds and the universe. They encourage us to think deeply and feel more connected to the world. Every time we experience a synchronicity, it's a chance to stop and think. Maybe it's reminding us of a dream we forgot or echoing an old memory. These moments make us pay more attention to the small details in our lives and consider that these coincidences might be more than just chance. It's like a journey of discovery where each synchronicity helps us understand the complex pattern of our lives. In the end, whether you see synchronicities as random or meaningful, they bring mystery and wonder to our lives. They remind us that life is full of surprises and every moment has the potential for something amazing. So when you come across a strange coincidence, take a moment to think about it. It could be the universe trying to tell you something. Synchronicities are not just a psychology topic, they're also important in different spiritual beliefs. For example, Buddhists believe everything is connected and that every event is linked to many other things. This means nothing happens by chance. Instead, everything is part of a larger web of life. Across the world, various cultures have their own ways of understanding synchronicities. In different cultures, people see synchronicities, or these meaningful coincidences, in special ways. For example, in some African traditions, it's believed that ancestors communicate with us through dreams or signs in nature, like a rare bird showing up at just the right moment. This belief teaches people to be watchful and respectful of the world, seeing it as full of messages and guidance. Just like when you're thinking of a friend and they suddenly call you, these traditions view such events as important signs to pay attention to. In Hinduism, there's a similar concept called karma. It's about cause and effect. What we did in past lives affects our present life, showing that the universe has a certain order or pattern. Then there's Taoism, a Chinese spiritual philosophy. It talks about Wu Wei, which means letting things happen in their own natural way. It's about going with life's flow and allowing events to unfold as they should. In modern spiritual beliefs, especially those influenced by quantum physics, synchronicities are often seen as signs on our spiritual journey. People tend to notice more synchronicities when they're growing spiritually or facing big decisions in life. The New Age movement, with ideas like the law of attraction made popular by The Secret, suggests that our thoughts and feelings shape our reality. Synchronicities are seen as evidence of this, like the universe responding to our thoughts and feelings. Regardless of what you believe, synchronicities challenge us to rethink reality. They're not just random, they're meaningful. They open new doors, encourage us to trust our instincts, and guide us as we learn about ourselves and grow spiritually. Even in our day-to-day life, we can spot synchronicities. Imagine you're working on a school project about space, and suddenly you start noticing TV shows, books, and random conversations all about space. It's as if the universe is backing your interest, giving you more information in surprising ways. This can be really exciting and make you think about how different parts of your life are connected. Noticing a synchronicity is like hearing a soft voice in a loud room. It requires both awareness and intuition. Often, it's a strange coincidence, an alignment of events that feels too unique to be just by chance. But to really understand these moments, you need to think about your own life and what you believe. For example, finding a feather on your path might be just a feather, or it could be a sign to make a big change in your life, especially if you've been thinking about doing something different. Synchronicities often communicate through symbols and archetypes, which are like a universal language speaking to our deeper selves. They might show up as animals, like a fox representing cleverness, or a lion symbolizing bravery. Or they could appear as repeating number patterns like 111 or 222, nudging you to explore their deeper meanings. Understanding synchronicities can also be fun and help us see the world in more creative ways. It's like being a detective, searching for clues in the things that happen around us. Maybe you find an unusual rock when you're feeling sad and it makes you feel better. Or you keep seeing the same number pattern, like 1111 on clocks, sparking your curiosity. These small things can bring mystery and excitement to our everyday lives, pushing us to think differently and explore new ideas. It's important to stay open to these experiences. Your intuition is key in recognizing these signs, but it's also crucial to balance this with logical thinking. Going too deep into symbols can lead to overthinking, but being too skeptical might mean you miss important signs. Finding the right balance between intuition and logic helps you understand the world better. Understanding synchronicities involves combining logic and intuition, personal and universal perspectives. It's about recognizing signs, connecting them to your life, interpreting symbols, and listening to your gut, all while staying grounded. As Carl Jung said, synchronicities are always there if you know how to see them. The science behind synchronicities is as fascinating as their metaphysical aspects. Our universe is like a complex web made of energy and information. Quantum physics might offer some insights into how synchronicities work. In quantum mechanics, particles can be connected over vast distances, showing a deep interconnectedness in the universe. It suggests that everything is more linked than it appears. Take the famous double-slit experiment as an example. It demonstrated that light can act both as a particle and a wave, and its behavior changes depending on whether it's being observed. This raises the intriguing possibility that the universe might react to our consciousness. If we think of our thoughts, filled with emotion, as similar to these observed particles, could they reach out and influence the world, creating synchronicities in our lives? These coincidences might be signs of a deeper unity within the universe. This idea extends into the concept of collective consciousness. Individual thoughts might influence reality, but the combined thoughts and emotions of humanity could have a broader impact, shaping the world on a larger scale. These collective influences could manifest as synchronicities, reflecting the collective desires, fears, and hopes of humanity. On a personal level, embracing synchronicities can lead to a more mindful and aware way of living. It encourages us to be more present in our lives, to notice the small details and connections that we might usually overlook. This heightened awareness can bring a deeper sense of meaning and purpose to our daily experiences. Synchronicities can also act as catalysts for personal growth and transformation. They often appear during times of change or uncertainty, providing guidance and insight. By paying attention to these signs and exploring their meanings, we can navigate life's challenges with greater ease and confidence, and maybe even discover new paths that lead to fulfilling and enriching experiences. The mysteries of synchronicities and connectivity can be thought of like the universe being a giant puzzle where everything is connected. Physicist David Bohm suggested this deep connection, calling it the implicate order. In this view, things that seem random or separate are actually part of a larger, hidden layer of reality. Synchronicities, those unexpected coincidences in our lives, could be seen as clues from a hidden layer of the universe, revealing how everything is intertwined in a vast cosmic dance. Moving beyond typical spiritual and psychological explanations, let's consider more mystical perspectives. For instance, there's the concept of the Akashic records, thought by some as the universe's ultimate database. This concept suggests a cosmic repository holding every word, thought, and action ever made. When we encounter synchronicities, perhaps we're unknowingly accessing this immense database. Renowned thinkers like Carl Jung spoke of the collective consciousness, a vast pool of knowledge and creativity contributed to and utilized by all of humanity. Synchronicities might occur when we connect to this shared knowledge, finding things that hold personal significance, thus creating these special coincidences. These notions lead us back to the idea of a deeply interconnected universe, where our minds and the physical world are interwoven in a complex cosmic ballet. This implies that our thoughts and feelings might not just be internal, but could also help shape the world around us. As we delve deeper into the mystery of synchronicities, it's important to reconsider our conventional beliefs about time and space. Typically, we view time as a linear progression from past to present to future, and space as having 3 dimensions. However, the concept of quantum entanglement in physics, which shows that 2 particles, once linked, can affect each other instantly regardless of distance, suggests a possibility of instant connections over vast distances. This could offer insights into understanding synchronicities, perhaps seeing these coincidences as distant echoes in our lives that reflect deeper connections we can't see. Then there's the multiverse theory, proposing that our universe is just one among many. Each decision we make could potentially create a new branch in this vast multiverse. In this context, synchronicities might be glimpses into parallel lives, brief intersections where our paths cross with alternate versions of ourselves. The role of dreams is also significant in understanding synchronicities. Dreams often seem to blend past memories, present worries, and future anxieties, acting as a bridge between our conscious and subconscious minds. This blend could provide insights and foresights that manifest as synchronicities in our waking life, offering us a glimpse into the deeper layers of our consciousness and the universe. Our minds, through dreams and insights, often reveal synchronicities in our waking lives. The power of intuition in this process is crucial and shouldn't be underestimated. Intuition acts like an inner compass, guiding us through the complexities of life. Sometimes what we perceive as synchronicities may actually be our intuition connecting dots in ways our logical mind cannot. When we blend science with spirituality, our perception of the world begins to shift. This fusion encourages us to see synchronicities not merely as coincidences, but as signposts pointing us toward deeper truths about our lives in the universe. Albert Einstein famously remarked that the distinction between yesterday, today, and tomorrow is essentially a persistent illusion. We're encouraged to think of time not as a linear progression, but as a complex tapestry where everything happens simultaneously. Consider space as a stage where the drama of life unfolds. We typically think of our world in 3 dimensions: height, width, and depth. However, string theory and other advanced scientific concepts suggest there might be additional hidden dimensions. These unusual coincidences we encounter might be our way of sensing these hidden dimensions. This idea challenges our conventional understanding of the world, prompting us to see a vast network of moments, thoughts, and feelings interconnected beyond our traditional notions of time and space. Synchronicities, or meaningful coincidences, are more than random chance. They act like mirrors reflecting our inner selves, helping us understand our thoughts and emotions. They offer opportunities to introspect, revealing aspects of ourselves that we might not have been aware of, such as forgotten memories. They encourage us to contemplate our actions and our purpose in life, inviting us on a journey of self-discovery and growth to understand our place in the world more clearly. In everyday life, synchronicities can guide us, especially when we're at a crossroads, feeling lost or uncertain. These signs might not provide all the answers, but they can offer enough insight for our next step, urging us to trust our instincts and remain open to the possibilities of life. They don't dictate our path, but rather illuminate potential ways forward, encouraging us to explore and embrace the journey ahead. Synchronicities remind us that we are not alone and that the universe is assisting us on our journey towards personal growth and happiness. Beyond just personal development, synchronicities can act as gateways to deeper spiritual and psychological exploration. They encourage us to step beyond the ordinary world and delve into more profound spiritual truths. By paying attention to these moments, we open ourselves to a richer, more connected reality. This can foster a sense of unity and help us grow not just intellectually but spiritually as well. The next time a coincidence grabs your attention, consider viewing it as more than mere chance. It could be a step on your path of discovery, a subtle guidance from the universe leading you on your journey. Throughout different cultures and historical contexts, synchronicities have always held a special significance. For instance, in Greek mythology, the fates were seen as weavers of destiny, using synchronicities to shape our lives. Native American cultures often interpret unusual animal appearances as spiritual messages. In Eastern philosophies like Buddhism and Taoism, these coincidences are seen as signs of deeper connections amidst life's chaos. This fascination with mysterious connections is also reflected in art, literature, and movies. Shakespeare hinted at this idea when he suggested that there's more to the world than we can understand. Modern films like The Matrix and Cloud Atlas explore how everything in time and space might be interconnected. Understanding synchronicities or meaningful coincidences is an intriguing journey in our diverse world. In Western cultures, where science and logic often prevail, these synchronicities might be dismissed as mere chance. However, some view them as indicators of a greater, more mysterious reality. Conversely, in cultures with deep spiritual or religious beliefs, these events are often interpreted as messages from a higher power or the universe itself. Regardless of the viewpoint, one thing unites us all: our natural curiosity and desire to understand. This innate drive leads us to recognize and interpret synchronicities, finding meaning and significance in them. Additionally, synchronicities can act as catalysts for change. You might have experienced meeting a person or encountering a situation that arrived just at the right time, altering your path or perspective in unexpected ways. Such instances highlight the profound impact synchronicities can have on our lives, encouraging us to remain open and attentive to the subtle yet powerful guidance they offer. These occurrences challenge our notions of coincidence and fate, inviting us to consider the possibility of a more connected and purposeful universe. In conclusion, our exploration has taken us through the history and cultural significance of synchronicities. We've observed how they manifest in art, literature, and movies, and how different cultures perceive them. We've uncovered patterns in the chaos of life, suggesting a deeper connection in our existence. In today's world, where digital connectivity has brought us closer than ever, we might find synchronicities in our online interactions. A random recommendation, a serendipitous connection, or a shared experience with someone from across the globe can all be viewed as modern manifestations of this phenomenon. Moreover, the role of intuition in recognizing synchronicities cannot be overstated. Often, it's a gut feeling or an internal nudge that alerts us to the significance of a seemingly random event. Trusting our intuition can open doors to understanding the subtle ways the universe communicates with us. As we continue our exploration, let's also consider the role of memory in shaping our perception of synchronicities. Our past experiences and beliefs filter the way we interpret these events, adding layers of personal meaning and significance. Now, I invite you to reflect on these ideas and insights, share your thoughts, and let's continue this fascinating conversation about the intriguing world of synchronicities.